Right. So I did a drawing. I channel drawing. I try to channel in images, right? And the image was, it was, we talk about you read things about the monad, which is like a dot on a piece of paper.
Yes.
And that's the source of everything, the oneness. And from that divine monad, it's a expansive light, right? And it's almost like if you can take that light and just keep expanding it, and then every sparkle that you see coming, those sparks are still that light.
Right.
But because they're stretching further and further away from the core of it, it's like they get distorted.
Right.
So when we talk about gods, these are principles, ideas, concepts, or you could say beings that have consciousness and self-awareness. But the closer you are to the source, or you still remain conscious and aware that you are that one. But the further you move away, the distortions can cause you to forget that you are an aspect of that one. Hence, humans, or what we call humans.
It almost sounds like when you go get glasses.
Okay.
Like the whole purpose of wearing glasses is to bend the light. So that you recapture a pure image.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because as your vision distorts over time based on like however you treated your eyes or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? You're reacclimated to what we would call, I'm gonna say, a material sense of purity when looking at things.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's kind of how I hear it. Like when you're explaining it, like the further away you get, it's distorted.
The understanding.
The understanding is
becomes
distorted.
Yes.
Put on some lenses, or have your vision or your understanding reoriented, aka going closer. Right now, you see clearly, or you reorient to a more clearer setting.
Right.
Not clearer, more clear.
More clear. Right,
setting.
Right.
Excuse me.
Right. So, I said even beings of shadow or darkness. Right. Now, these beings of shadow, I wouldn't even say they have an origin in. It's kind of hard to say when you're speaking from a certain perspective. You would need somebody of a shadow to speak from their own perspective. Does that make any sense?
100.
So only thing that I could speak from is going to be a very distorted understanding of that. And maybe, I like to look at Sifu because he's a little bit more balanced when it comes to like shadows and light. When he explains it to me, it's like, dang, it puts me back to like a couple weeks of thinking.
Right.
But the drawing that I have, it's showing that one light, and then you see it's like not crumbling, but the way I had to draw it, it looked like it's crumbling. And then as it's crumbling, you see what we consider as it descends, and I'm using descension as a direction, but it's no descending or ascending for really. It descends, you see it starts swirling into what we consider the yin yang symbol.
Right.
So these you have beings of the light that choose to stay that way, but they become separate, or the one becomes, at that dimensionality, it becomes split in perception. Meaning you have what we consider a polarity, which is the fourth principle. And these shadows actually work, we would say, against, but for the whole, it actually is a balance on that level to say, okay, I'm going to play this way and you play that way, and that way we could learn more about where we come from.
It's the counter spectrum action.
Right. It's kind of like you always remind me of this a vampire in Brooklyn.
Oh yeah.
If every day is a sunny day, what's a sunny day?
Yeah.
So you need to have rainy days to say, man, it's gloomy, it's this, it's that, it's whatever, to hope and pray for the sunny day. And when the sun comes, it might be too hot. You're like, man, I wish I had some rain so it could cool down a little bit. So these two things just keep playing. But again, as one starts learning or gains Christ consciousness, you see that, man, it's a beautiful rainy day. Right. Man, it's a beautiful sunny day.
Exactly.
It's no different.
Right. That goes.
I'm not saying I'm there, but I get to those moments. You know what I'm saying? And it's an awareness of like, oh man, this is real.
Well, if and maybe we can share an example of something that you've seen in different texts that people ascribe as being holy text.
Okay.
Right, where they see images of something like that, right? So maybe in the Bible when as it's written, like when Jesus goes to the was it to the adulterous woman?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. I don't believe that it really goes into a synoptic analysis about that person's background or previous conversations that they may have had or whatever the case may be. But correct me if I'm wrong, but the story basically ends with him telling her to get up, sin no more, right? Mm-hmm. You're fine.
Right.
Right. He recognizes the completeness of being, right, as opposed to what everybody else might have saw.
Right. Ooh. And even what everybody else saw, he challenged what they were projecting, which was they were more purer than the woman.
Right. Exactly.
So standing in my presumed purity, I have the right to judge her.
Right.
And they were trying to pass judgment on her.
Right.
He said, well, okay, he who sinned, he who has not sinned,
let him
cast the first stone.
Throw the first rock.
Go ahead.
He didn't do anything.
Right.
He just presented a question or a point, a statement. And they, within themselves,
right,
some kind of sorry, go ahead.
He gave them the opportunity to see the light within themselves or see that darkness within themselves.
Self-reflect.
Right, exactly.
Which that's the whole, at least for me, that was the whole point of the story.
Okay.
Right, which, if you go back into the moral code of that, right, that the act that they ascribed to this person, right, was very reprehensible. Right? Like, hey, look, you have, if it's a crime to commit, you have committed the crime. Right? And it's worthy of it, as far as how it's written, it'd be worthy of capital punishment.
Right.
Right? But the way that the Christ, right, the way that he presented it, hey, look, if we're gonna do capital punishment this way, let's just do it
across the board.
Across the board.
Across the board.
Who's not worthy of capital punishment?
Oh my gosh.
Right? Woo. And I don't recall a discourse between the
it's a lot of things left out, like you said, because you're supposed to have 2 or 3 witnesses. You're supposed to have this. So people get entangled on, well, this story is it true? Is it not true? What difference does it make? What's the message that you get from the story?
Right.
Because you could read and read and read, and you create all of these pictures in your mind, these images. We wear garments. This is our rendition of something. That it's more real for us now than it is reading the book.
Right.
So what the matter is like, what are you getting from it that you're applying for your soul's development moving forward?
And that's that question, right? Say that question again, right? What are you getting from it that you're applying for your soul's development?
Okay.
That's what I'm hoping we can get into today when we talk about from suffering to initiation, the path of the Christ being.
Right.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what are you gathering from the details that surround your experience?
Right.
That you can apply appropriately, whatever that means to you. Right? I'm not going to put a label on appropriate because everybody has a different understanding about what's appropriate to them.
Absolutely.
Right? But what are you gathering from those details that is developing your soul?
Mm.
Go ahead, Mike.
The ends justify the means. Listening to your story, listening to what you were saying, the adulterous woman was only adulterous compared to others. Correct?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Who presumably may not be adulterous physically.
Okay, we can say that.
Presumably.
We can say that.
Conjecture. Yeah, I got you.
That's why I say presumably.
Someone decides what's adulterous and what's not. We've all known someone that was a little more promiscuous than the other and thought that they were doing correct. By where you're going with the conversation, the adulterous woman needed to be adulterous to meet that point in her
her journey,
in her development,
Right.
to where the Christ told her, okay, you done passed that point, sin no more. You know, you finish with that because you're here. Now, how we look at that in a physical, if we look at her adulterous behavior as shadow behavior, light is the source of all shadows.
Yes.
So what he realized was she was a reflection of him,
Come on.
just at the opposite end. But for lack of a better statement, she came to the light. So now it's no need to, deal with the extras of what you was talking about with the capital punishment. Now this is where he's applying the light onto the others who are trying to cast shadow.
Right.
Not realizing that it's the light that's responsible for the shadow. It's like if you're without sin, you cast the first stone. Everybody has to have some kind of experience to get to that development. Now the way the way it was taught to me, we call it the Sahu, or some call it your higher self.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so the plants, the seed is the lower self. It deals in the ground. You actually have to push it past the level of the crust. But once you push it past the level of what we know of earth, then it can start to develop. The end of its development, once you look at a seed, you're not going to see the flower. You don't even know the flower really exists, but the flower is there. But it's at the end of the development of that plant. It goes through stages of cotyledon leaves, the first two leaves that come out. That's kind of boring, the first two development. Then the stem comes out of there, and then there's stages to a plant, and then boom, you see this pretty flower.
Right.
That flower only blooms for a while before it withers. It might produce a fruit, or it might produce a seed, which is the fruit. Then it falls back and does its cycle over again. Well, it falls to the ground and it goes through another development. So it keeps happening. It's not something that's gonna stop. But the seed is in the shadow place in the beginning of its development.
Right.
And
It's in the darkness.
if I can, I want to read something on that it's funny. Not funny, but I appreciate what you're sharing, because this is how I understand what you're talking about. And what I have is that you talked about different stages that are demonstrated to the consciousness of a person, right? And I like the analogy that you use. What I got from that is that there are possibilities that should come to light for every person, where there's a deepening in that person's being through the trust in the spiritual worlds, which I would call that the void.